Hi, Maria. So nice to see you in person after a long time.
Yeah, hi Sarah.
Um, I remember we met 2 years ago when we moved to Sacramento for my job, and you were already doing PhD at UC Davis. We knew each other back from our master's program, so there is no question of how you became to choose PhD in energy systems
Yeah,
because that was
of
what
course,
you
yeah.
chose for your master's as well. But I want to know what was that point where you were thinking about going to US for PhD and you were applying for it. You came here on Fulbright. So what was that emotional journey for you like?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we have known each other for a very long time. It's funny that we never met when we were at Nest. I think at some point we were in on campus at the same time, but we never actually saw each other. We never met. And I spoke to you, I think a little while before I actually was about to move, and then we continued communicating from there. But it's nice to be close and be able to meet you. And so my journey for PhD, like you mentioned, I think it started when I went on the exchange program to Arizona State University, and that's where I was exposed to the academia in the U.S. And my PI at the time, who was only my PI for about 3 months because I skipped I wasn't able to make it on time, and I only had 3 months at ASU. He was amazing, and he was a really great mentor for me. And at some point when I was about to leave for the program, I think he mentioned in passing, well, I hope to see you back here soon, maybe, for a PhD or something. And I think that stuck with me. I always wanted to pursue higher education. I think when I was getting my master's, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go for a PhD because the job was, naturally when you want to start earning something when you're that old. But I think at some point when I was at ASU, I did think about, possibly, PhD is a good path for me. I was passionate about the work I was doing. I loved the atmosphere at ASU at the lab that he provided, and it was very different from how things worked at NUST. Even though NUST is a great university, but the culture in Pakistan and the U.S. is very different when it comes to academia, and especially when it comes to the resources that you have available to yourself. So it was, I'd say, it was a little bit tumultuous emotionally because I was struggling with winding up my work because all of the students who went on the exchange program kind of lagged behind on their masters and took about an extra semester or so to finish and wind up their dissertation and just graduate. So it was a little bit like, when do I finish this? When do I get to the next step of my life? And do I start working? Do I apply for a PhD? If I apply for a PhD and I get it, but I've started working, how does that work? Do I leave? What do I decide to do? Yeah, yeah, it's a lot going on in the mind, and you're young. Yeah, you're a young adult, and there's so many things going on in your life, and there's economic prospects. There's not such great economic prospects in Pakistan, but there's something. And if once you get into a workplace, or you just start working somewhere, or if it's a degree or if it's a job, once you start doing something, you get comfortable, and it's hard to get out of it. And you think about the what ifs. What if I leave this and then I go there and it doesn't work out? And what if there could be something else? It's just a lot going on in a young adult's mind. So yeah, in terms of emotions, I'd say when it came to the time of making a decision, it took me quite a long time to actually decide to say yes to the Fulbright program and say yes to the PhD opportunity that was being given to me for a number of reasons that we might get into later today.
Yeah. Tell me about what was your Fulbright journey like? Because I remember when you contacted me, you were going through this dilemma of choosing universities. And Fulbright is notorious for that. They
Yeah.
put you in places where
Yeah.
you don't want to be. So what was that like?
So, unbeknownst to me, the whole Fulbright process it's a very complicated and I'd say it's very concealed for somebody who doesn't know the insides of it. Now that I've been with them for about 5 years, at the end of my program, I know how they work, and if I was to mentor somebody or talk somebody through on how to apply with Fulbright or whether to at all, there's so much more that I know than I did back then. And as you mentioned, when you apply with Fulbright, they give you the option to name a bunch of universities, which I was very I would say naive, but I think because I was not born and bred in the U.S. and I wasn't fully aware of the kind of opportunities here. There was very limited exposure that I'd had to the certain universities that I knew about or heard about from people, and I was like, oh. Those sound like good options, so I put those down. Some were like really like top tier, which I don't know if they were very expensive. There were private schools. They usually don't go for private schools for PhDs, and then some were just like institutes that my friends had mentioned in passing or some faculty member had mentioned in passing. So I'd say there was a certain lack of uh, robust knowledge on my part as to what program and which university would suit me best. There were one or two that I put it down there that were really good, but Fulbright reserves the right to accept or deny those options or put them in the application, keep them, or just remove them and replace them with their own choices. So they can look at the program that you want. They can look at your personal statement and say, well, this program does not look like a great match. How about I put this in this university with this program instead? Or they just try to keep you. There are certain universities that they have contracts with or do offer them full fee waivers, and that's something that is a big. I think it's very important for Fulbright, and so they sometimes do tend to prioritize that. I won't say always, but in my case, that was certainly something that happened to me. So I think it was very blindsiding, I'd say, because they keep you out of the process, even though they do everything for you and they make things easy. But if you don't know enough about what you're doing and how you should get to it, I think you get a little bit blindsided and you end up with something that's completely different from what you wanted initially. But yeah, that for me, I think, and I take responsibility for that because I should have done more research. I should have asked around and asked the more important questions about, what is the process, what does it look like, and how am I going to end up in the place I want to be? How can I make that happen? But you know, you live and you learn.
So you ended up at Washington State and then you moved to UC Davis.
Yeah,
I have two questions on that. Why did you choose UC Davis?
yeah.
Did you know that that was an option? And how did that transfer look like?
So UC Davis, I'll start with that. I tried to fight for UC Davis when I was putting the names down for the university, but because I was very unfamiliar with, my I'd say my rights too. Um, I I think did not put up enough of a fight, and I said, okay, whatever. You guys made the suggestion. I wanted to go here, and I wanted to make this change, but I didn't know how I could really make that happen, and it seemed like it wouldn't be possible, so I just gave up. So UC Davis was always there in my mind, and the energy systems program particularly. But I had applied for material sciences initially with Fulbright. That's where my work was. I worked in material sciences. I have a background in chemistry, and during my master's, I worked on solar cells. It was a wet chemistry lab, and I worked on the contact layer of perovskite solar cells. They're a thin film solar cell. So it was really fun work, but I wanted to expand my options, and I just didn't want to be confined to the materials world, and just see if there were any natural openings for me uh, f- with a program like energy systems. lets you do whatever you want. So basically, you have folks from mechanical engineering, from chemical engineering. Yeah, you've got folks from psychology, economics. There are so many different diverse backgrounds, and it just opens up so many options for you to work in various kinds of fields in your research. So unfortunately, that didn't work out for me. I ended up at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. It's a very remote city, and it was a very big change for me when I moved there. It was kind of shocking because I found out when I moved there, having only been exposed to Tempe, Arizona, which is really well connected, I would say, as compared to a lot of cities in the U.S. When I moved to Pullman, I found out that the only way to get in and out of Pullman is if you have a car. Um, and there's just one Greyhound that runs from Pullman to Seattle, and it's usually a 4 or 4.5 hour journey on car. But if you take the Greyhound, it takes you 10 hours. So it was a little bit shocking for me to realize, oh, I have been put on this remote island. It's in the U.S., but I don't know where I am, and I don't know how I'm gonna move about. And it just, even though you don't necessarily need to move around that much, it just feels kind of constraining.
Isolating,
Yeah, yes,
restrictive.
and
Yeah.
you're being bogged down. So that was my introduction to Pullman. It was a really fun campus. There was a beautiful campus, and it gets very cold. It was snowing about 11 days straight when I got there. And I had to stay indoors because it was COVID and I was in quarantine. I didn't know anybody. It was a very unique kind of situation for somebody to be, moving to a new place and then being isolated. I think I did fine with the isolation, but yeah, Washington State University. It was a good program, but I gave it a semester, and I tried looking for labs that I could fit into and would want to work with. Mostly, I was just looking at folks who were working with solar cells, and then I was also looking at the policy side if I could switch it up a little bit and work with somebody. And even though the professors were great, they were super supportive and really nice and interested, I just didn't feel like I found something that would make me want to stay. And so I started my journey of trying to convince Fulbright, hey, look, I gave this a shot. I tried to make it work. It's a great program. I'm sure somebody's going to be happy with it, but I feel like I'm going to do much better with energy systems. At I had three options at the time, and I think you asked me how did I decide on UC Davis. So since it was during the academic year that I was applying, and I'd missed the deadlines for applications because I think I was well into May when I started this process. So most universities, they, I think they wind up their admissions process by January or just early before spring, I'd say. But I did go through a bunch of universities that were offering the energy systems program, and I found three that were offering, maybe three or just two that were offering rolling admissions, ongoing admissions if you could, have some a PI sign on for you, or just say, hey, that they can help you with the admission process and expedite it. So,
What were the three
so
options?
the first one was UC Davis. The second one was Penn State, which I also liked, but I really wanted to get into UC Davis because I don't like the cold. I know that might
Unlike
sound
me.
I know that might sound silly to people, making choice based off weather or climate conditions, but
No,
it
it's
just
not.
depresses. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So I am happier when I am in warmer regions, and I get a little sad when it's constantly raining or it's constantly snowing, it's freezing, and you can't go outside. So I think UC Davis was number one priority for me. Um, the second one was Penn State, and I think I looked into Georgia Tech, but I'm not sure if they had rolling admissions or not, and if I ended up applying there. But I do know that I applied to Penn State and UC Davis. And UC Davis responded really quickly. I spoke to, I think, four professors. Three out of four were willing to take me on, and there was one professor that he's in the chemistry department. He's a great guy, and he works on artificial photosynthesis and partly just was starting working on solar cells, and so he was pretty excited to take me on, and it really worked out well for us. He helped me expedite the admissions process. It went through. Fulbright agreed, and I was able to convince them that energy systems is a much better program for me and for what I want to do eventually, and when I go back to Pakistan. And so they agreed, and I was able to get the admission and move to Davis. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. When you moved to Davis, you joined your now husband, Ali,
Hmm.
who was also on HEC funded
Yeah.
program doing his PhD at UC Davis. Your timelines coincided and you both were there together?
Yeah, so Ali also ended up applying to UC Davis because he knew that I was moving to UC Davis, and our families were in talks about us getting married, and it was great that we were here at the same time. We ended up, being a huge support for each other, and I think getting married and having a partner to be able to share your, I wouldn't say worries, I don't think we had much worries, but we were in along the same disciplines, and when your work is similar, I think some people say that it shouldn't be the case where the husband and wife are in the same field or working on similar things or know too much about what each other does. I think it's been the opposite for us. It's been very exciting to be able to share our experiences and be able to speak each other's languages, and it's been very comforting to have him by my side, and it felt less of a foreign land, having family with me, as opposed to if you're here all alone, all by yourself. And even though I think I'm good with people, I know how to make friends, but it's different. The stability you get at home with a husband, and you're able to just share meals and share how your day went, and I think it just makes everything much more, worthwhile.
Yeah, more bearable.
More bearable, yeah, for those who go through trying times, and just more beautiful in general, I think.
Yeah. Tell me about the time when you guys got married and you
Yeah.
decided on living together.
Yeah, I think part of the um, the push to get married like super quick was also, we were both here, and it's nice to have somebody you can count on, but also we were living in separate housing, and that is an economic burden on students. And so I think it made a lot of economic sense to, since we are going to get married, just get married soon and move in together, and combine our finances, and that way you can, if you can start saving, you can start going on vacations. You've got much more headroom for things you want to do, and yeah, so we ended up getting married and moving in together. We were living in a shared space initially, which is a house that Ali absolutely, my husband Ali absolutely adores. He still regrets sometimes that we moved out of it. My only thing is that because we were in a shared space and we had roommates, I felt like I personally needed more privacy. Maybe he does not feel that way. He's a man, he does not feel that way. But yeah, I felt like we needed more privacy, even though we had a separate. It was kind of like a separate unit with a room and a master. It was a master bedroom and a bathroom attached to it, but we were sharing a kitchen and the living space. Our roommates were great, by the way. They were so kind and helpful and very friendly. But I felt the need to, be in a more private space. So we ended up moving. But also part of the impetus was that since I was working in a lab and I had to, Davis is a huge biking culture, as you probably know by now. I had to bike every day in the sun, and you know how hot it gets in Davis in the summer. Every day, a 15-minute bike ride just to get to my lab and then back. And it was exhausting for me, and I wanted to move close to the campus. Another reason was that I'd say it's very bustling around the campus where we live right now, even though it's a smaller place than when where we lived when we were in a shared space. Overall, the house was much bigger and it had a backyard. But I really like the area, and I love that it's sprawling with students, and they're people like us. It's a transient space. People come and go with their students coming and going every year, and there's always something going on. We're close to campus. If there's something happening on campus, we can make it. If we don't want to, that's okay. But we have the option. I feel like we missed out on a lot of things by being far away from campus during our first year here. So I was excited to move close to campus.
Yeah, I think that is kind of a privilege if you're closer to campus. You can go to classes on time
Yeah,
and
and you don't have to worry about being late. Just 5 minutes up, and you can
but
make it.
also you get to enjoy that campus life. I
Yeah,
really miss that time when I was closer to campus and just one bus ride away or just walk away or one bike ride away.
yeah,
It's just so not just convenient but so inclusive
yeah.
that you feel like you're a part of campus. You feel like this is a life
I
you
know.
came here to
Yeah,
enjoy.
the student experience, the student life, right?
Yeah.
And I think because we were living in a residential area, it was kind of far away from campus. You kind of miss that. You see folks around, there are other people living, but they're just, they're not students, and it's not the student life, and it's not student activities, and you kind of feel like, I don't know, am I on campus? Or am I at university? Because I also lived, Ali and I, we both lived in the hostels at Nust, and it's a really fun experience.
Yeah.
I feel like when we move away from here and we start working, we're really going to miss student life. It's in some ways it's very free, and it's very it's fun and exciting, and it's not the same thing every day, day in and out. Something's going on campus, something's happening, and it's really fun to be part of that student body.
Yeah. I want to talk about the time when you two are now living together. You're closer to campus, you have your own accommodation, but you both are doing PhD, the same department. How was that like? Two PhDs in the same household.
Um, so I think since we were in the same program, if anything, it helped us. There was a lot we could discuss and a lot we could help each other with. I'd been through some of the things before Ali because he started in this program a little bit after me, so I could tell him about those things, and he didn't need to go to anyone else for information. And there were some courses that we took together, and I think that was great. We could sit down and work together. We could study together, and I don't think we've ever been in a project together, but it's just been really fun to be able to have like your roommate, your husband, your roommate is, part of the same class, and you don't have to call someone up and say, "Hey, what did you do about that homework? What did you do about that assignment?" And you can just share this information among yourself, and it's been really fun. There were some courses that we took together that we really enjoyed, and it got a little bit nerdy, but it was really fun, and we had a blast.
Yeah, and then you guys had a baby as well. Um, what was that timeline? Were you already ahead in your research, like second or third year, where you know where research is going, you know the direction, and you were just designing the experiments or modeling or everything, not in the time where you were like, what's happening, what kind of topic I will work on. So when was the time when you guys had a baby?
So when Ryan was born during my fourth year of Fulbright, but my third and a half year at UC Davis. And to answer your question, no. No. I had only just figured out what to do, what I was meant to do, because I had made another transfer from the lab that I was working in to someone else's lab, who's my current PI, who's a great man, and he's been a great support for me, and he's very hands off. So I I had the freedom to choose what I wanted to do, but I also had the pressure of figuring myself out and figuring everything else out for myself. And because since I took responsibility for myself, I could be held liable for wasting my time, wasting my resources, wasting his time. And so I just figured out what I wanted to do. I spoke to him about it, and he said, "Yeah, great, go for it." And then I found out that we were having Rayan. And I was planning on taking my QE, my qualifying exam in October. And that kind of, derailed things a little bit, in my mind, at least. I found out in May, early May, and I was intending on taking my exam in October. You know that before a qualifying exam, there's a bunch of work you need to do, especially if you just figured out what you want to do. You have to figure out what your project is. You have to map it out. You have, figure out what the methodology is and how you're going to justify yourself in the exam. Do you have the tools to do what you want to do, and are you good enough or to qualify for a PhD? Do you have enough depth and breadth of knowledge at that point for the committee to say, yeah, we feel like you'll be able to do it? But I think I buckled up a little bit. The initial 3-4 months were a nightmare where I just could not do anything. But I decided that I want to stick with my timeline, and my PI was, kind enough to endorse it and say, yeah, I feel like you'll be able to do that. If I trust you, if you feel like you want to do it, you go ahead for it. And so I think I took about 2.5 months maybe preparing for my project and how I want to present it to the committee and how I will defend it. And finally, in October, so Ali took his QE about a month before me, and in October I ended up taking my QE when I was 6.5 months in with the pregnancy with Rayan, and it went well, and I qualified. And so that was a huge burden off. So I'm grateful that I stuck with the timeline and I did it, and I didn't push it off and say I'll do it once he's born or afterwards, because I think it only gets harder. I think you feel like, hey, if I get through this, it'll be fine, but it only gets tougher, and you're only required more time and energy, especially after your baby is born, and you have to really be good about time management.
Yeah. When he was born, you were a first-time mom going through PhD as well. How did you manage your time, and how did the whole system worked out for you, that you have research, that's another responsibility. Like you kind of had three jobs, research, baby, and the house. How did you?
Yeah, I also had TA-ship, so I had to teach a class 2 months after Ryan was born. So that was something that I also took on, and my PI was, he asked me whether I thought that I was able to do it, and if I was comfortable doing it. And I really wanted to convince him that I could, because I did not want to take away from my PhD experience or just whatever was going on in my career because I had a baby, which sounds like a silly thing to say. It's a huge event, but I wanted to be able to manage both side by sides, and it wasn't the easiest. But I think just the fact that oh, I have to do this because I committed to it, I think that helps a little bit. It's very difficult, but luckily Ali and I, we both work remotely, and so we would take turns. Initially, obviously he can't replace a mom, so I was very much busy with Rayan almost all day for at least the first 1.5 months maybe, where the baby just sticks to you when they always need you. They feel like they're a part of you. They don't even know they're a separate person yet. But yeah, I think TAing really helped me, teaching that class, and keeping myself busy. I think it really helps when you commit to something and then you are held accountable for it, then you do it. And otherwise, for somebody like me, I feel like if there's no check and balance, if there's no, like, oh, at the end of this, somebody's going to say, hey, did you do that thing? Did you figure out how you're going to do this? I feel like there's a lot of time that can be easily wasted, and even though it's challenging, it still is. It's extremely challenging for me to manage time, but you figure it out somehow. You make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make it work. You have
You
no
don't have a
choice.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Lot of people go through this thing when they have a child, their life is like 180-degree shift. You are more focused and
Yeah.
you are saying no to things, trying to only take on projects that make sense. And some
Yeah.
people take completely new direction in their life after having baby. Did that happen to you in terms of research as well? Trying to condense the scope or change the direction?
Yeah, I don't. So I think my husband can probably attest to it. I think I have a little bit of a problem where I overestimate what I can do or overpromise, and then I hold myself to it, even though nobody's asked me for it. And I think my PI also has probably like pointed this out a couple of times. Like, if people are happy with less, why do you want to do more? Why do you want to put more burden on yourself? He was talking to me about my dissertation. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about chapter one, chapter two, and this would be chapter three. And he said, if people are happy with just the one and two, why do you want to you know add more work for yourself? And if you can justify the scope of work within that amount that you've done, why sometimes there's no need. And I think that's something that I'm still learning, and I I'm not the best at doing. I would say limiting my scope is not something that is my forte. Saying no is not something that I'm great at. But I think it's a really important skill to have, and if you have it, great. If you don't, work on it, like I'm trying to work on it. And I think it really helps if you narrow your scope down and you're really focused. I think with me, it's more about, I hear something and I'm excited about it and I want to be part of it and I want to start working on something new. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You start working on something and you realize, oh, there are a bunch of hurdles, or you can't get the data, or you don't have the resources and you have to stop. Or there are things that, you start because you're ambitious and you do manage to get them done. But yeah, I think people need to be trained, or somebody this needs to be taught, how to keep yourself in a place where you can comfortably manage all the work that needs to be done, or what is expected of you, and not promise any more than is needed. If you want, you can do it, but you don't need to go out of your way to prove yourself. I think some folks have that. I think this tendency to overdo stuff just to, I don't know what I'm trying to prove, but sometimes some people have that. So
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about this a little bit more in terms of that existential crisis that we discussed earlier. Everyone in PhD goes through that. There are times when you're like, why am I even doing this? Can I just quit and have a different life? Wouldn't that be easier? Or maybe this research would not get anything for me and maybe I should not keep doing this or change my topics. A lot of people change a lot of topics. Uh, so how was that journey like for you? And now I think it's safe to ask because you're about to graduate. So you have stick to your topic, I assume. So how was that whole journey for you and how did you end up doing what you do right now?
so I think it's very natural and it's very common in grad students, just being a little bit lost at some point. I started working, like I mentioned, I moved to UC Davis and I was working in a chemistry lab and I wanted to do work on solar cells. But at one point, I started questioning myself. Even though the work was great and it's fun being in a lab, sometimes I miss it. But I really started to question myself in terms of my career choices, in terms of my career options, I'd say, knowing that I'd have to go back to Pakistan. And with the kind of work that I was doing in the lab, I would be just severely constrained to just academia, which is something that bothered me. Now, I have nothing against academia, but you, the job market in Pakistan, the job market in academia, it's very small. And within that, you have a particular field and you have a very niche subject that you're working on. And there's not much in industry that's going on. R&D is not a thing in industry, as far as I know. It's maybe very little somewhere, but it just does not exist. There aren't a lot of
Also, you
options.
should be able to expand your options.
Yeah.
You should be able to say,
Yeah, I
right
want,
well
you
into
know,
academia, say
yeah,
maybe this is not working for me. I need
yeah,
to move
how
on
about
this.
move to industry or the development sector? So I ended up deciding to move out of that lab and working with my current PI, where I didn't really know what I wanted, what project. I knew what kind of line I'd want to work on. Something in sustainable communities is what was I was focusing on, or just generally just looking at the SDGs and working on a project. At that time, I was focused on developing countries, but I did know that I wanted to expand my horizons. So with work like that, I could have gone into the development sector. I could have worked with like some international organization who were trying to push the SDGs, or with, in academia, that's still an option. So that's something that really pushed me to make that move, even though it was difficult. I think that was the hardest 6 or 7 months of my life, where I was going through that transition. Then I made that transition, and then I couldn't figure out what I was going to do. And every day I would think to myself, have I made the biggest mistake of my life, deciding to move out of my comfort zone, do something that I knew how I was going to be able to do, something that I had experience in and I'd worked in it before and I had a good background in, and moved to something that's completely different. But that's life. You make a decision and you stick with it, and hopefully it works out.
And I think that is what actually PhD training is
Yeah,
for,
yeah,
to learn something that you
different.
haven't learned before,
Yeah,
to explore an area that's completely new to the world, even.
yeah,
No one else has done that before. So you need to be able to understand that learning curve will be part of this and be okay with it,
yeah.
even if it makes you uncomfortable. Uh, on that, I want to ask you what your current research topic is, and do you ever think about the impact, or how would you bring the storytelling aspect to it? Because that's what I love to do. So I would like to deep dive with you on that.
hmm Yeah, of course. So my work is at the intersection of industrial ecology, sustainable buildings, and human experience. So Um, the tools that I mostly use to do this work is life cycle assessment, and looking at the flow of materials and energy through energy systems, or whatever, say buildings or heat pumps. For example, I have a study on heat pumps where I look at the life cycle assessment of heat pumps across the U.S. and see, whether it does make a huge difference, converting from, natural gas boilers to heat pumps, in terms of the carbon footprint and the techno-economic aspects of it. I think industrial ecology does that really well. It combines not just the technical, but also the social or economic or other factors that, sometimes, um, sometimes when you're working on something, it just, you get a little pigeonholed. I would, so when you're looking at technical systems, sometimes people get a little bit, very tunnel vision. They get tunnel vision. You just focus on the technical aspects of it, and not how it influences real people around it, or the people who are exposed to those systems or those technologies, or whether it is actually feasible economically or otherwise. And so one of the projects that I'm currently working on, and is the major project in my dissertation, is development of an assessment, a sustainability assessment tool or a framework, looking focused primarily at student housing on UC Davis campus. And the idea is that sustainability isn't just the carbon footprint. What is the carbon footprint per capita within this building? And we have a zero net energy building, and definitely that's going to have a much less carbon footprint. But how are the people who are exposed to those systems, or those building designs, or um, those sustainable buildings that have been designed for them, how are they feeling living within those? What is their experience? Are they comfortable? Are they happy? So, part of this project is comparing a really high efficiency building and the folks living in there and their experience with people living in an eco village, which is it's an intentional community, and it focuses a lot on like harmonious living with nature, and being very close to your neighbors and knowing what they're doing and inviting them and having like weekly, bi-weekly dinners, or just having a really vibrant community. How much happier are those folks compared to those living in a really high tech, cool, zero net energy building? And where do we find the balance between efficiency and technical design and lived experience? So yeah, that's where I'm currently at with my work.
Yeah, that's so cool. I didn't even have to explain to you how how to make it more easier for the audience to understand. Your topic in itself is very public facing work, so that helps. But yeah, generally, whenever I talk about storytelling in research or in um, creating the impact, actually, sorry, translating the impact of your work for folks who are moving from academia to industry, I always talk about three things that you need to like have one sentence and add three things in that sentence. One, what are you doing in very layman words? Who are you doing it for? Who is your audience? And what value are you providing to them? How will it change their life?
Right.
Which I think you explained really well. So
Thank you.
thank you for that, Maria. Do you have any last thoughts or advice for the audience?
I would say for folks who are hoping to pursue a PhD, please do your research. Please look at what your passions are and where that kind of work is being done. Also, look into what kind of institute structures exist, what kind of funding is available, can be available to you, what options there are. Don't limit yourself. There are a bunch of options that students can opt for, and I think you do a great job providing the information on that. And I think just being able to take the time to do a little more research on what is possible, and sometimes we tend to take the easier route. Sometimes later down the road, we tend to regret the easier route. So it's good to do your homework and just, take your time, think about it, think about whether you actually want to do it, and think about what your future looks like and what you want from it, and whether there are certain constraints that would hold you down, and whether you are, ready to take them on and accept those constraints. If not, there are always other options.
Yeah, thank you. This was almost Dr. Maria. uh, and she's doing her PhD at UC Davis in energy systems. And we had such a great time talking to you, Maria. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much for coming here, for talking to me, sharing your experiences. And thank you for your advice.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.